Thank you, everyone. When Greg and I moved here in October from Los Angeles, we wanted to come to this church. We've been going to the Science and Mind Church in Los Angeles with Dr. Beckwith. So I just want to thank you for making us feel so welcome. Really, and thank you for inviting me to speak. You guys have been great. So I sort of thought it was a little presumptuous of me to come here and tell you about the spiritual hotspots of the high desert, because you probably know them better than I do. But I had written this book. If you want to go to the next slide.
Hold on a second, you don't seem to be on. Let's see your mic.
Is that what I should just tell you?
You're fine.
Yes, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I usually have that right here, but we couldn't figure that out. So I'd written this book and published it in 2020 about a guide to spiritual LA, and it has a day trip out to the desert, out to this area where all the spiritual hotspots are. So I thought I would share them with you, and you can tell me the ones that I left out, or you can tell me the facts that I didn't get. That would be great. We can have this could be a group project. This book actually won a 2020 Nautilus Award, which is kind of a new age category. And it also won, can you go back? Yeah. It also won an Indie Excellence Award. So I was pretty proud of that. And in Amazon, it's the 7th bestseller in the category Los Angeles Travel Guides, which means it sells about 2 books a year, but. So anyway, it was a really fun book. And one other fact about this book is that Greg and I were dating when I was writing it. And I would say, do you want to go with me out somewhere to take photos for this book? He'd say yes, so I knew he was the right one. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, please. That's Ernest Holmes. So one of the reasons I chose this quote is because somebody when read this book and they said to me, isn't it beautiful all the ways that people look for God? Isn't it beautiful? So as you know, there's many eccentrics in here, many unusual, what we might consider unusual ways of looking for God, and yet it's all the divine. So I wanted to share this quote from Ernest Holmes. Next, please. Okay, so it seems to me it all began with Giant Rock. If you want to turn in your book, this is on page 180. If you can just follow along here. And Giant Rock was here, and it was a holy place for the native people. It's considered the world's largest freestanding boulder. So Ayers Rock in Australia is obviously much bigger, but that's not considered a freestanding boulder. And what I heard is that Native Americans from all over the area would come here and have ceremonies. And in 2000, the rock split, which was a sign of the millennium. It had been foretold that it would split at the dawn of the new age. And it actually did in 2000. Giant Rock was first inhabited by this guy, I can't remember his name, and then George Tassel and his family came here. I'm going to talk about George Tassel in a minute, but they hollowed out underneath, and they lived underneath it. So there's a whole apartment, so to speak, or a whole home underneath Giant Rock where they lived. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is on page 178. So George Van Tassel there's a great documentary on him. I think it's on Prime. It's like an hour long. And he had been visited by beings from Venus, and they had instructed him. He wrote several books about the encounter, and he was especially in contact with one named Salganda, and this being encouraged him to open an interplanetary airport by Giant Rock, and his wife opened the Come On In, which you could get hamburgers or whatever. And if you remember back in the 60s, there were almost every town had a Come On In. This, the yearly conventions attracted up to 11,000 people.
Wow.
So this was not a small thing, so this was going on. So there was this whole revolution here in the high desert in the 50s and early 60s of UFO encounters and people coming here for the vibe. And this is still today one of the places where the highest numbers of UFO sightings are in the world. The high desert here and in Sedona are two of the highest areas. So we've gone to Sedona and gone on UFO tours, which are fantastic. So we're like, why isn't anyone doing that here? So maybe someone will start some UFO tours here. George Van Tassel then was instructed by the Venusians to open the Integratron. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then the FBI was keeping files on George Van Tassel, and he died mysteriously, so we don't know what happened there. If you could go to the next slide, please. Integratron, how many have been there?
Yep.
Fantastic. It was designed as a longevity machine, but unfortunately, George Van Tassel died, I think, at 72, 69, not that late. It was designed by the extraterrestrials, according to George Van Tassel, and it was financed by Howard Hughes. So they were in cahoots to build this longevity machine, be in contact with UFOs. It's built without any nails. There's no metal in the whole building. And it had fallen into total disrepair. And in the 1970s, it was bought by the Carl sisters, and they have refurbished it, refinanced it. And I notice when you go out there now, almost all of the people that are there, their accents are European accents. Anybody else notice that? People are coming here from all over the world to go see the Integratron. So what have I left out about the Integratron? Anybody have? Yes?
The sound, music.
Yes, there's sound healings in there. They have sound baths, and there's some kind of strange resonance in there. You could be standing on this side and whisper, and your friend on the other side will hear you. It's very kind of eerie. What else?
It's one of the highest magnetic field places in the world.
Highest magnetic fields in the whole area?
Most highest.
Amazing. What does that actually mean?
Oh, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, he believed that he would build a landing strip for UFOs.
Uh-huh.
So that's what they fed off of.
Right.
Was the magnetic field. Also, there's a plaque outside that describes that it was a desert.
So it's at this intersection of a lot of what's called ley lines,
Yeah.
which haven't been proven, but there's a metaphysical understanding that these grids cross the planet, much like acupuncture lines. And so wherever they cross, there's perhaps it's a magnetic field, I don't know, but it's a place of resonance, a vortex resonance, and that the Integratron's location was especially designed to take advantage of that. Mm-hmm.
And also that SpaceX has a base here close by now because they're studying the extraterrestrial.
So where UFOs show up, I learned in researching this book, is often where there has been Native American presence and where there's military nearby and where there's mountains. That sound like any place you know? Okay, so these things are not accidents. Next, please. And then in the 70s, there was another big rush of interest here in the Joshua Tree area. And this was the rock stars that came out here and the psychedelics that were taken here. So there's a big movement for psychedelics again today, and that's mostly for healing. Back then, it was for spiritual search. So hippies were trying to get spiritual understanding, besides have a good time and learn whatever they could learn, but it was a little bit of a different emphasis. So the Rolling Stones were here, Anita Pallenberg, Graham Parsons died actually in this Joshua Tree. He's credited with starting country rock. U2, as we know, put out their album. There's a great little short 6-minute video on YouTube with Donovan talking about just the spirituality of the Joshua Tree area. Jim Morrison was here. John Lennon put out something called the Joshua Tree Tapes. Ted Markland was this guy who was a minor actor who was a very popular person, very socially skilled, and he had all these people out all the time having big parties to take psychedelics under the trees. Timothy Leary was out here, supposedly had one of his weddings up on a mountain and was too stoned to continue. So there was this whole search to come out and do psychedelics in the desert, which continues today amongst certain people. And that perhaps the emphasis is not always on spiritual search, but frankly, if you do psychedelics, you're going to have some kind of spiritual awakening, whether you want to or not. Anybody have any comments about this era? Mhm.
Harmonica Joe was there.
Harmonica Joe is there.
Yeah, Ted Markland actually took groups of people, some well-known, some not, out into the wilderness to have a communal psychedelic experience.
Fantastic.
And do what we can do on our own in this day.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, next. Okay, this is on page 189. This is actually one of my favorite things. Over here on the hill, what, about a mile and a half from here? Over on Sunny Slope. How many know about Desert Christ Park? About half of you, okay. So Anton Martin was living in Englewood, and he was a sculptor, and he built this 3-ton statue of Jesus in his driveway in Englewood. And his idea was that he was gonna put it at the mouth of the Grand Canyon,
Wow.
and his permit was turned down. So he brought it out here in 1951, and he started sculpting these huge statues of all kinds of biblical scenes. And they started repairing them, but they were kind of falling apart, and vandalism and being left out in the elements. And this is on page 189 in your book, if you want to look. And so there's the scenes of like the Last Supper, there's a Sermon on the Mount, and it's beautiful to see these sculptures, just one man's dream of how he wanted to express his spirituality for all of us, how he wanted to share it. And they've just fallen apart, and to me there was something quite beautiful about them just being there and falling apart and still radiating love. But they've taken up a collection, and now they're starting to repair them, so you can go over there and see them and take in Anton Martin's gift to all of us.
Can anyone just show up and?
You can just show up. It's just there. And you can just go walk around and look at it, and it's amazing. Put a few coins in. Anybody else have comments? Yes?
So I don't remember all the details, but if you've been there recently, the hands are disproportionate. And there was something about vandalism, and the person that restored the hands, didn't get the scale right. Does anybody remember the rest of that? I don't know, but it's very obvious that the hands don't match.
And to me, that's just one of the beautiful things about it, is it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And it's falling apart, and they're repairing it wrong, and it's still this, beautiful gift. It's full of radiance, yes.
Yeah, I have a comment about the hours. I think it does have certain hours and closes at a certain time, so look it up on the internet before you go, or online to find out, what time.
Oh, thanks, didn't know that.
There's a gate there.
We must have always accidentally gotten there at the right time.
The gate, I think we went one time when it was closed.
Mm.
They're open like 9, some 9 to 4 or something.
Okay. Awesome.
There's a treasure right here. Next, please. So down in Desert Hot Springs, the whole Hot Springs area, of course, was Native Americans really enjoyed that area. And there was Cabot, I think it's pronounced Zerxa. Does anybody know for sure?
Yucca, yeah.
Zerxa. And there's a museum there, which is a kind of a tourist type museum.
Yep.
All very nice. But they don't really mention that these were secretly highly degreed masons. He and his wife, Portia Graham. Her name isn't up there, but I think it should be.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
they were obviously a couple doing this work together.
Yeah.
Highly degreed masons, and they founded the Desert Hot Springs Theosophical Society and had meetings in their room, in their home. So all this was going on, perhaps under the surface, that these high adepts were here in the desert creating this compound. They were also activists for native rights. This is on page 190 in your book if you want to look. So I think this is another beautiful thing about the desert in here. Anybody know anything else about Mr. and Mrs. Zerxa? Yes.
They had dirt floors in there, and before people went into the meeting room, they had to throw stones and then sticks because the snakes had to leave.
Oh my goodness,
Wow.
that's a great fact.
And they have beautiful wind chimes in the windows.
Great. Okay.
They hung
Yes.
out with the Van Tassels.
They hung out with the Van Tassels?
Yeah, there was a whole group of them at that time. When you go to the Cabot Museum down there, when you go on the tour, they'll tell you all about how this group of people, they would go to Giant Rock and hang out. They all hung out together.
Wouldn't we have loved to hang out with them?
Oh,
Been fun, right?
yeah.
Next, please. Now, of course, we know about the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. It's one of the biggest retreat centers in the United States. And it was started, I'm not sure when. And Edward J. Dingle, who was the creator of mental physics, had studied in Tibet. He was one of the first Westerners to study in Tibet, one of the first white people. And they claim that there are 18 vortexes on the property. And you can go there and get a little map of where they are, and you can walk around and explore.
My husband and I were head of the spiritual division there from 2002 to 2006. And over several weekends, we invited people out and mapped the vortices.
Oh, thank you for doing that. Yay! Fantastic. So, vortex, do you want to explain what a vortex is?
No, you go ahead.
I'll do my best. Next slide, please. So vortexes, again, are where the ley lines seem to cross, and certain places carry more spiritual energy than others. So there's energy grids and ley lines. The intersections are vortices. So, for example, you might think that our gathering right here has more spiritual energy than Vaughn's,
Yeah.
or you might not. You might be a more tantric persuasion, which says Vaughn's is just as spiritual as this. However, where a lot of spiritual people have gathered, or where UFOs have gathered, or there's portals to other dimensions, these places are called vortexes, and they've been identified all over. A lot of times you may be standing in a vortex in the middle of Los Angeles and not even know it. That's one reason I wrote this book, because there are vortexes in Los Angeles, very strong, powerful ones. And everyone says, oh, Los Angeles is so superficial. Well, it can be. It can also be extremely deep. So these vortexes are also amplifiers of energy, perhaps, portals to other dimensions. What did I leave out?
If you come to a place in the desert where there's kind of a bare area and it's evident that a lot of people have been there and it's out in the middle of nowhere, there's probably a vortex there. That's one of the things we noticed in mapping out at Mental Physics, is that people created new pathways to places that there was apparently nothing, and there was a vortex there.
Yeah, so you'll kind of wonder sometimes when you're traveling, why did a city grow up here, or why do people seem to congregate at this area? And often that's because there's a vortex there of some sort. Any other comments about vortexes? So my question is this whole area one big vortex? How come there's so much stuff here?
Yeah.
How come there's so much spiritual stuff in such a small area? Why have people always been coming here?
Yeah.
When Greg and I went to Sedona, we went there a couple times over the pandemic. We just get an Airbnb and hibernate. And we thought, a lot of people think they're coming here just for the hiking. And that's fine. And they go home and think, wow, I had a really great weekend hiking. And that's true here too, right? A lot of people think they're coming here just for the hiking.
Yeah.
But what else are they getting while they're here? Don't know. So, perhaps we're living in this spiritual vortex.
Yeah.
We know we have one here at the center, but perhaps this whole geographic area is the spiritual vortex of something to offer with the rest of the world that they're hungry for. They're coming here a lot. Where did they come after the fires? They want to be here with us in the desert.
Yeah.
So I think we can really think about that. We live here. It's one reason Greg and I were attracted to come here, because there's so much spirituality just inherent in this land, from the land of giant rock, from the land of the natives, letting us know that this is sacred land. Of course, all the land is sacred to them, but perhaps with the analogy of Vaughn's, perhaps some more sacred than others. Perhaps we have all come here to live in this sacred space together, vibrate at a certain level.
Mhm.
So I think it's something very beautiful to consider about this wonderful sacred area that we live in.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to say something about Giant Rock. Last time I was there was a few years ago, and I hope something has changed about the defacing of that beautiful
Wow.
place. We drove all the way out there, which is a good trek, and it's beautiful. If you love the deserts, it's beautiful all the way out there. If you don't love the desert, it would just be kind of, when are we gonna get there, right? But once we got there, it was just sad to see how
Yeah.
much graffiti of offensive, profane nature had been painted or sprayed on this amazing site. And to me, it was just a symbol of how unconscious people in this culture can deface such a sacred object,
Yeah.
which has probably been going on since time immemorial. But and it would be great if somebody, either here or someone that you know, would want to take on the project of erasing all of that garbage off of this beautiful rock.
That's already been done.
Somebody behind you.
There's a group of people that go out there periodically
So it's still,
and clean it up.
it's in process.
It's ongoing because.
Yeah, I got an
Face.
invite on Instagram to go.
Yeah,
It'd be great if there was someone there also that could be like a steward or someone that could protect it and just be like a permanent camp person there.
Just takes
To
money.
watch over it.
yeah.
That'd
Did you
be
have a
ideal.
comment?
Oh, no, yeah, I was just gonna add that there were blight sites and positional projects and high desert cleaners are a few of the organizations that do it used to be just once a year, but now they're doing, I think, 2 or 3 times a year because, to keep up with the vandalism, but it does help. And so the next one that I know of is, I think in September. I think they just had one though, like a week or 2 ago. So yeah, you can find them on Facebook. I think that's their most active platform.
It's very encouraging.
Yeah, but it is hard to see. It's awesome.
I had a friend in the early to mid 90s, Diana December Wild, also known as Dee Dee Winterbear. When she was a little girl, her adopted father built the first strip mall in Orange County, and she used to be dropped off out at Giant Rock with the Van Tassels for a couple of weeks at a time. I've been under the room that used to be under where they did all the channeling. There was a student of Van Tassel, I can't remember his first name, last name was Green, and Mr. Green had some writings that indicated that the channelings came through a little girl, and that was Dee Dee Winterbear, and she didn't want anything to do with UFOs because she would, when she would receive the information, she would stand up on the bench that was there as 3 and 4 years old, and the information would come through her, and then she would wake up laying on the bench with a headache. But that was documented through, I can't remember his name, Mr. Green.
It's just endless how great the stories are out here. That's what I have about this area. What did I leave out?
I just wanted to add on that the Native Americans used Giant Rock as their meeting point. It was a neutral space, and they knew already that it has a very big vortex and spiritual energy, and helped them in making decisions.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I would put forth my argument that this whole area is a vortex.
Yep.
If you want to take a look in these books, there's all kinds of amazing things you would never imagine about Los Angeles. Like, who would ever imagine that, oh shoot, it just flew out of my head.
That happens to me too.
What's the shaking?
Oh, Pentecostal.
The Pentecostal religion started in Los Angeles.
Oh, really?
So it actually had started somewhere else, but it came to prominence because there's this little Bonnie Bray house that you can go visit. It's a little yellow house. I actually got to go in once because we were there at the right time. But the house, a couple of ministers were there, one guy had only one eye, and they were praying and singing and praising the Lord, and all of a sudden, it took over. And the Shakti got so high, the energy got so high that people started coming to this house. And for a week, maybe it was 3 days to a week, there were people in the street feeling the Shakti and the holy energy all up and down the streets. It was all kinds of, it wasn't just Christians, it was also Jewish people, black people, white people, all kinds of people could feel this energy happening in the area. And that's where the Pentecostal movement started. It's amazing. You can go to this house now and you can feel the Shakti still in the house. That's one of the most amazing things I found when I was researching this book.
Yeah.
As well as all kinds of occult things. Yogananda, as you know, was one of the great teachers of Los Angeles. He came there, and on the back of the book you can see that he said that Los Angeles was considered the most holy city of America. Guess he didn't know about Yucca Valley, but
Also, our founder, Ernest Holmes,
Ernest
started
Holmes?
in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, little thing in here, so. Anyway, yeah.
Yogananda was at the dedication of the Institute of Mental Physics in 1941 on Auman Hill that is on the west side of the property. Dingley May had bought it in 1941, but because of the war, the building could not start until 1945 there.
Fantastic, thank you. Were you gonna offer something? Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, the Oasis here, what do you think about them? Are they also
I don't know anything about it. Can you share it with
Where
us?
is that?
the Oasis?
Yeah.
In 29 Park.
Few oases in the desert.
Oh,
Oasis of Mara.
There's some in
Oh,
Joshua
no.
National Park, 39, two of them in 29 Palms.
wow.
What is it?
Yeah, tell us.
Oasis of Mara.
Mhm.
Oasis,
that,
come, the
49
water comes
Palms
up.
Oasis.
What is it?
green and pretty. It's a
It's
spray.
a
natural place.
Palm trees growing, water standing.
Is it a spiritual place per se?
Well, I'm
Not
just wanting to ask
really.
your opinion if you have.
I don't know about it,
Yeah,
so.
but it's not like spirit.
I think that one of the most
Maybe
frustrating but amazing things is Scientology down there, by what Ron L. Hubbard founded down there off of Sunset Vine. They try to, when you say I'm a religious scientist, people say, oh, you're a Scientologist. And you always have to split, and you have to say, well, I am not a Scientologist. But it's the most amazing thing because you are measured on energy. And that's what section is, that if you can keep your energy up and your wavelengths, because you have a test, there's people that hand out cards down off the Sunset Vine. And the Children's Hospital is there. You got across the street, Kaiser Permanente, and the hospital of Hollywood Hospital, Presbyterian Hospital. So it's the three corners right there. And then you have Ron L. Hubbard Way, which is handbrake on the, I would say, in the street. And they would have events even. That's the one that John Travolta and, what's his name, off of Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise. They all belong to this way of thinking. But that's one thing is when you say who you are and then what you believe in, you always have to split that hair and say, well, that's not what we are about. We are about, even though it's Los Angeles, you always have to split that hair because we were on the other side of the town. That's where we were
Well, you know who's on the same side of the Church of Scientology? On that street? Right next door is Yogananda's place.
Yeah, yes. So it's amazing that, that wasn't remarked on, that there's so many places, but that one place, when he bought that old hospital and he painted it blue.
Okay. Well, there's some stuff on Scientology in this book. It's not all bad. Okay.
No, you're right.
One more?
How about the Hare Krishna Center?
Hare Krishna's in here?
Hurry.
Okay, guys, thanks for your attention and thanks for educating me.
Thank you.
Oh. These books are yours to keep unless you'd like to make a suggested $5 or $10 donation, which will go to the food bank.
Oh.
But otherwise, you may keep these if you like.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.